April 26, 2023. Well, a couple of days ago, it seems that Tucker Carlson woke up and had a communication that probably shocked the heck out of him. In spite of being the top ratings person on cable news, he was summarily apparently fired. Um, uh, from, uh, um, and we're still trying to piece together exactly what the hell happened. You know, it is one of those kind of strange situations. I mean, the lawsuit was over; they'd settled out of court. I mean, well, in court, but I mean, they settled the case before it went to a jury, and so it's over with there. And it's generally considered that all of the number that the Smartmatic has, that probably it's maybe not as threatening of a case in reality. At least that's what some commentators like Bill O'Reilly said. So at any rate, the question is then why, nearly a week later, do they end up firing Tucker Carlson? And in fact, he said very little about it. In fact, only tonight did I get something which I think may actually be a leak from Tucker himself. Um, so, at any rate, I'll kind of that's what I'm going to kind of get into in this video here is some thoughts about the subject. Obviously, I think it's bad news. I mean, after all, it was probably the the one show on Fox News I actually just sat down to watch, other than I guess Special Report. Other than that, the rest of them I kind of from time to time leave it on the background while I'm doing other things. And if some announcement comes on or something that perks my interest, I may stop what I'm doing and go over and do that. But and then there's other special programs you'll watch sometimes. But I mean, that was the ones I really liked. Partly it's because of my own schedule and things that would, get in the way of watching other things. But at any, Handy's okay. I mean, but anyhow, but point I'm getting at is this is sort of a bit of a shocker, and so we're kind of getting into what happened. I've come up with a novel theory of my own. I'll also in this later on this video relate what Tucker was thinking might be the real reason, which, if true, could be ominous. Um, but we'll see about that. Um, so and there are all sorts of moves afoot. I mean, I was uh, looking at some interesting fact that BlackRock has been buying up some News Corp stock, I guess. Although it looks like since it's got two different classes of stock, voting shares and non-voting, it still looks like the Murdochs pretty much have a controlling interest in the near term, anyhow. Um, Especially assuming that at least they have a 13% of more friendly people to themselves than rather than to BlackRock, they should be okay. Um, the general consensus is that one of these producers is suing them, and that might have something to do with it. Although I just read that actually they didn't really work in the same office, and so they probably rarely ran into each other. It's unclear that anything he did himself is directly related, so it may be things that people at the home office. Apparently, he works from remote sites primarily, although I guess he, well, I don't know. That's what they said. At any rate, that's one possibility. Um, and apparently her job was booking guests anyhow. So that's, one thing. And the other is somehow, a lot of comments apparently he'd made that were brought out in the all the depositions and all the subpoenaed data that they had to turn over as discovery. And like I said in the previous video, it amazes me that people that are in these sensitive jobs where there are the possibility of investigations and lawsuits are continually just spilling their mind out in these text messages and emails. I mean things that could come back to haunt you, like well, that program we put on was a real big lie, but hey, we're doing it anyhow. I don't mean to say they said that, but I know that some of the people on Wall Street had done that, was saying, this stock that we're recommending to people really is a bunch of junk, but we're doing it anyhow. And then this gets subpoenaed, and then they all get in trouble. Well, so that's one idea. I've come up with the thing I always thought was sort of unfair about this was the fact that Tucker himself was really not one of the big, people who really had defamed Dominion at all. In fact, quite the contrary, as I'd pointed out previously. Also, he had actually criticized the whole so-called Kraken thing that Sidney Powell was pushing, and said, after having her on one time, he comes back and says, we haven't been able to verify any of the stuff she's saying, and basically this is, we don't think this is right. And that led to my own little novel theory on what could have happened. Maybe some of the comments that he was making in these various texts and potentially emails or whatever were actually useful to the Dominion lawyers to score points in their case and only force a higher settlement than it might have been otherwise. And that maybe the management is sort of blaming him for basically creating this evidence when he was really just trying to tell the truth. So that's one possibility that I've come up with that nobody else has really said so far. They've generally thought it was because he thought that somebody he thought wasn't that good of a host ought to be fired. I don't know who that was. I kind of wonder, but that's one possibility. The other thing is maybe the idea that that he just was a little too hot for the Murdochs to handle. I mean, they're stinging from an nearly $800 million lawsuit, and so perhaps they're just want to lash out at somebody, and he kind of symbolizes the best of what was there somehow. Because on the other hand, maybe this is sort of their kind of offering to the gods of establishment, or what do you want to call them. In other words, somebody had to pay a price, and the question is, what do we fire everybody involved? Well, how are we going to replace all these people, and what's going to happen to what are we going to put on the air? So the idea of getting rid of one guy who sort of more than anybody else symbolizes the best, it kind of clears the air, and maybe he's a difficult person to deal with anyhow. I mean, we don't know there's a lot of claims that he can kind of be a pretty difficult person to deal with from a management perspective. And apparently he continually went off in directions that they didn't like, such as his challenges to the, January 6th. I mean, the whole thing about Epps, I don't know that he ever actually stated Epps was, I have to recall, did he actually say that Epps actually was an FBI informant? I think he pointed out that other people in the protest the night before were yelling "Fed, Fed, Fed," when he was saying, go into the Capitol. And he also said that he believed that there were FBI and other government informants involved in the crowd that might have done things to sort of, escalate the situation. But that's a little bit different than saying a specific person really was. The other mystery about Epps, of course, was the fact is, why wasn't he prosecuted when he was initially put on the wanted list and then taken off? Where other people that did very little, maybe even briefly walked around the Capitol and maybe got a little too close, were prosecuted and hunted down. So you kind of wonder, why was he given grace wherever the other people weren't? And that leads to suspicion. Maybe wrong. Maybe the guy was just lucky. Except that now that he got known, he's hitting a lot of abuse, according to the 60 Minutes show. Now he's kind of unlucky because of it. So maybe the guy really was just an enthusiastic guy that shot his mouth off the night before but didn't really act on it, where other people did. I mean, who knows? But I mean, it's saying that the general theory, though, that there's very suspicious things about January the 6th, that everything is on the up and up about how that was handled, investigated. I personally also believe that there was a conspiracies involved in it. Particularly, I think that the establishment saw that provoking a riot at the Capitol, given the protest was a way to try to fundamentally damage Trump permanently, which is what the establishment wanted to do. And I think that was what Tucker was pointing to. But I don't know that he specifically claimed he actually knew this about a specific individual. But anyhow, so that's another thing that may have irked because obviously the Murdochs wanted to cave on the thing and pay off rather than fight. I mean, I personally would have, like I said, I think they should have fought myself. I think they'd have won, but There's a downside to that, obviously, and particularly if the thing that Tucker apparently has stated to some friend I was reading on the internet, if this is authentic, this may explain something else. And this is not good news either, I think, is that they want to actually sell Fox News to somebody. And I don't know if that's true or not, because even Tucker doesn't know. That's just a hunch that he had of why they might have got rid of him, is that the prospective buyers that are out there probably wouldn't want him. And the idea that by trimming down the company, maybe there'll be other things that it would be turned into something that would become more of a moderate conservative network that would be viable by somebody. I don't know. I don't, it'd be nice. I certainly hope a liberal doesn't buy it and turn it into another, CNN. That would be a disaster. And hopefully it isn't even sold anyhow. I mean, like it or lump it, I know there's always we're mad at Fox and we're going to do this or that. But the fact is, Fox is a very useful thing to the conservative movement. Everybody doesn't have to be quite as conservative as you are. And the fact of the matter is, or I am for that matter, but it's important, I think, that we have at least one major network with a fairly large viewer base to counter all the other 5 networks out there, right? I mean, and of course, we have other small ones. Of course, there's Newsmax. Now, another interesting possibility, and I don't know if this is possible or not. I know that Sean Spicer's leaving Newsmax, so they have an opening. And an interesting thought would be if Newsmax were to hire Tucker, rearrange their schedule, and put him on at the same time he'd been on Fox. Now, that would be a very interesting move because he would almost certainly draw a lot of his followers over to Newsmax. And the general purpose he really had in Fox was to set off build up the ratings for the rest of the evening. That you want to have a really strong, anchor show to begin your evening lineup. And then if you succeed, a lot of people will just continue to stay on that network. Whereas if you don't have a strong position there, they may jump all over the place more, although a lot of people do anyhow. But I'm just saying that that's a strategy that's used. I mean, even in entertainment television, to have, some really popular show early in the evening to try to get people to watch the rest of the lineup and that kind of thing. So that's another, takeoff on what might be happening. Of course, I don't know whether he has a non-compete agreement in his contract. We really don't know whether he was really fired or whether he really agreed to resign. To get a severance package, or was he denied his severance package, as some reports have? I mean, this is all very confusing. There's just a total confusion, and it'll probably take some time to find out exactly, what the situation really is. And of course, Dan Bongino, I think, spent a lot of time today proposing the idea that he could definitely become a podcaster, sort of like Bill O'Reilly did originally after he left. Under probably even darker circumstances. So anyhow, that's kind of what I think about. I think it's a sad thing. I'm going to miss the guy, and because it's in addition to writing interesting stories, and some of the interviews he did on Fox Nation were really unique and special. I think very useful, and I think we're going to really miss that. And of course, I did check that out, and well. I don't see him being there like he was before, but by looking around, I did find a couple of shows, but I think they're ones I just started to watch and didn't complete for some reason. So I don't know what that status is either. That's another thing. But so at any rate, that's kind of where we are on that subject. Well, in general, I think we're beginning to see that the left is using a variety of economic measures to promote censorship. I mean, that's what this is all about: is censoring ideas, controlling information for regime benefit. And the regime I define as a mixture of the liberal movement and the Democrat Party, these so-called woke corporations that are fighting for their ESG scores, and these large economic things like BlackRock and others that are promoting this sort of thing. This all goes together to create a power structure that's kind of not in the interest of the people, in my opinion. At any rate, I'll be wrapping this up now. I will post this on Rumble as always, and of course the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. So until next time.